Hello, people of Earth. This is Tesko with Rip Kenny and Trap Jesus, and you're listening to the Human Music Podcast. Woo!
Human Music Podcast. I like it. Hello, humans. What's up? Welcome back to the Human Music Podcast. We're here this week with our good friend Seancy, who is a powerhouse of a musician, super dope producer, also a rapper. He releases under his own solo name of Seancy, and he's also one half of the FLOWMADS. And we're going to learn a lot about music production today. So Seancy, tell the people a little bit about yourself, about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Well, thank you. Well, my name is Seancy. It's funny because I go by my name. That is my producer name, so I like that fact. But anyways, I don't know. I'm just a kid from the mountains. Grew up in the mountains and fell in love with like underground hip hop, and that's what made me want to create music. And so the whole culture of not stealing, but borrowing old things and repurposing them into new things. I feel like I'm one of those people that's like, everything is a remix. All ideas really should be collectively for the good of people and stuff. So I like taking ideas and making new things out of them. I'm always just finding the best materials to make new things and mix and create. So that's kind of where my style comes from when it comes to all the music I've been making, from like hip hop. It's like hip hop, electronic, reggae, funk, with that like textural vibes from borrowing from vinyl. And then a bunch of like analog production from synthesis, and just always was like the bassiest music around until I started to discover the bass music scene and all that goodness, and realized that there's a whole nother register that you can start to play with.
Yeah, there's levels to this bass game.
You got started by making bass boosted YouTube videos of all your favorite hip hop songs.
sort of something like that. Like actually, I got started. I would take tracks I really liked that I could find clean drums on, like a clean kick and a clean snare and stuff, because I wasn't sure where to get it. So stuff like, I don't know, there was like some J5 tracks and stuff that I could take those from. And then I was flipping, like I had access to the whole collection of like Beatles music and stuff. And way further down the road now, I'm not worried that like, okay, I did that all as a fun experiment and learning and everything, but I've made a bunch of music out of resampling Beatles songs and putting beats to it and kind of flipping it around. Like you could do anything with Beatles music. It's already beautiful and amazing. So that was kind of a cheater step, but that was kind of a great learning process, and to figure out what elements go together. But yeah, and then just figuring out how to like crank up the low shelf on the on the whole EQ there, just to make the bass like super fat and pretty muddy, but
12 dB low shelf boost on my master every track.
You only go to 12? Let's go 24. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Give us the bass for real.
I want it to like clip and distort on every speaker that you can hear it on.
Exactly.
Yes, that's how you know it's bassy. Listen.
Yeah.
If it doesn't break your ear pods, it's not happening enough.
It's not avant-garde enough if it doesn't break your headphones to listen to it. So you said you're from the mountains. Whereabouts?
Yeah.
Which mountain?
It's Mammoth Lakes. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Mammoth Mountain.
Oh yeah.
It's very similar to like Lake Tahoe. It's about 3 hours south.
Yeah.
On the eastern side of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And it's a ski resort town, and fishing and mountain biking and all that kind of stuff. So I grew up with all that. My background is that. Like I grew up skiing since I was 2 years old. I was on like a strap-in pair of skis. My parents were like ski instructors and hang glider pilots. So outdoor stuff's always been really huge for me. So I feel like that really connected well in these last 4 years with festivals, outdoor festivals, camping, and like not just having the best of everything that you want, being outside and having the best like sound systems around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I feel like that might be the reason I'm drawn to this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you still ski avidly, or?
Yeah, I try to every year. Yeah, I mean, I live in San Diego now, so I'm down here in San Diego, and it's not that far. So a couple times a year I try to get back to the mountain and get skiing, especially because you can kind of see if the snow's coming, it's going to snow. I can get up there in time and get some powder.
Yeah.
And I still have enough of a little ins with the community and stuff that I can get tickets at a reasonable price. It's a pretty expensive sport to try to get onto a mountain.
So I've never skied at Mammoth. I've mountain biked there, but so like for reference, Tahoe is probably 3 times as expensive as any local ski hill that I've ever experienced. I don't know if Mammoth, I'm assuming it's probably similar, close.
Yeah, it's right there pretty much nowadays. It was always a little bit lower. It was always a little bit cheaper than Tahoe, like when I was growing up, and it's a little bit closer to LA and stuff, so LA would come up to Mammoth quite a lot.
Did you ever try to sell out for snowboarding like I did in middle school and sucked at it and then went back to
I did snowboard a couple times. Like I've tried snowboarding, but I never was like, I'm a snowboarder like half of the kids did. And that was in middle school. The same thing happened. So where are you from?
I'm from Seattle. I live in Bend, Oregon now.
Oh, okay, sick.
But yeah, I was a skier my whole life. Also very avid outdoorsman, mountain biking, dirt bikes.
Nice.
And I basically in like 7th grade when snowboarding got really cool, I was like, oh fuck, skiing's not cool anymore. I got to try snowboarding. And actually I tried snowboarding up at Mount Bachelor for the first time, and I sucked ass at it. Even though I was okay at skateboarding, I was hardwired for skiing, so I couldn't snowboard for shit. And I was like, whatever, I'll just ski. And then 10 years later, now skiing's like as cooler in the eyes of like younger generations, which is so funny that
it made a comeback a little while ago, 7-8 years ago. It was like, or honestly, right when I was going into college, I was getting out of high school, like 05, like that 4-year period. Skiing started to have that revolution of like freestyle skiing, like the half pipe competition started to get skiers in it. Twin tips got really popular. And then just like, now it's just kind of become like, I really like the scene because snowboarders and skiers like really mesh well and get along. And they're all like, dude, we're doing the same thing. Just whatever, whatever kind of stick you want to ride on down this mountain is like, we're all down for it, Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. There used to be this weird feud. And I think it was because most of our parents grew up in an age where snowboarding was a hippie sport that was ruining their mountains. Like for whatever reason, the old guard always has such an issue with fucking new cool things that the kids like. And so there was always this kind of like butting heads. And then as like the people that grew up with both got to a certain age, we were all like, wait, what? It doesn't.
Half my friends snowboard, half my friends ski. Why would I be a bigot about it? Chill out, guys. We're all having fun. We can all get on the chairlift. Just calm down. I feel you. I was a skier, and everybody in middle school like jumped over to snowboarding. I was like, no, I finally got good enough to keep up with my friends on these kind of sticks. I'm not switching, goddammit. I've tried snowboarding a few times. It's plenty fun too, but yeah, once you stick with it, it's like, it's like the wars producers go through over DAWs. Like, oh, no, I'm in Ableton, screw Logic. No, I'm in Logic, screw Machine. Like, shut up. Can you make dope beats? Is your shit hot? Dope. If not, still dope. Keep trying. It's all about what you personally like to do and what you're good at. Just rock with it.
Do you take inspiration and like, I don't know, like infuse the mountains into your music? Do you feel like that kind of makes its way into your art?
I think at a fundamental level of trying to incorporate organic sounds and like soundscapes and textures, I've always had like, I'll take sounds from anything that I can imagine, but a lot of times it's really natural sounds to get like that feel, because you're just kind of symbolically, you're using like other types of vibrations into your music rather than just digital creation or whatever. So definitely like that. The whole vinyl feel kind of reminds me of that. Like listening to vinyl just reminds me of like being in the woods with that crackle. It's kind of like listening to the buzz of the insects and stuff going on. So
I always feel like I write better music after a weekend in the woods, whether it's mountain biking, snowmobiling, camping, it doesn't fucking matter. when I'm not, after I've not sat in front of my computer for 24 to 48 hours, I will always sit down and write something that just feels fresher, I think. And we've touched on this before, but I think it's important that people understand the concept that like diversity of inputs results in a diversity of outputs in a creative sense, right? Like if you like, you can definitely sit down and hammer out beats all day, every day. But at some point, if all you're looking at is your computer screen all day, you're going to start to just get in a rut, you know? So whether it's just taking a walk outside, take a different street you haven't taken, anything to trigger some impulse that is not your everyday helps kind of break out of those kinds of ruts, you know?
Totally.
I heard that described as like having an event horizon, like where this is that introducing that novelty in your life, like. And it was I was listening to Russell Brunson's podcast, and he was referring to how, you know, every year as you get older, it feels like that year went faster. And scientifically, they've researched that that's because your brain starts deleting the parts of life that are the same all the time. So like if every day you wake up and you do the exact same thing, your brain's like, we don't really need to store that part because we've woken up and drank coffee and, you know, read the newspaper a million times. So let's just delete that whole time section. We don't really need to store that. Whereas like when you were a kid, every single moment was brand new. And every time you tried a food, it was brand new. And every time you went somewhere, it was brand new. And being in the car and looking out the window, it was brand new. That's why car rides seemed to take forever. Like I remember my first time going skiing, that hour in the car felt like the longest time to get to Snoqualmie. Yeah. Whereas now I can blink and miss that. But then, you know, if you make sure to go out of your way and find novel things in your life, put aside time to have new experiences or similar experiences in completely new places, then you'll actually like really burn those into your memory.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's definitely a concept that I've realized. For instance, you take a 2-week vacation to Hawaii, you stay at the same resort the whole time. That vacation feels like it fucking flies by. But you take a 2-week vacation to Europe, and every 2 or 3 days you're in a new city, and every day, because you don't have that much time, you're doing a widely different thing. At the end of that trip, it actually feels like you've been there for a while, which is funny because it's the same amount of time. The Hawaii vacation just feels like you blinked and it was gone. And the other one, you're like, you know, I'm actually like, that was a good vacation. I'm ready to go home. I've noticed that, and I couldn't explain it before, but now that concept you just mentioned is perfect.
Yeah, that's really interesting. They studied that. Sorry, Seancy.
No, go ahead.
No, that was it.
That's it? They studied it? Oh, man. I'm curious what you're going to say now. I was just going to add, like, I like what you're saying, Luke. I listened to a guy named Jason Silva, and he talks about, he's always repurposing other people's like stuff into his concepts, but he's like, it's like the been there's and done that's of the adult mind. It's like what's really important to our minds and what stands out in our memories is novelty. So like what you were describing is novelty is what really stands out. And I think that loops back to what you were saying, Evan, about making music, because you kind of become across novel ideas and novel experiences and circumstances when you change your environment and when you stretch your limitations a little bit and you do things that are outside of the normal. And so I think it's a huge important thing for people to do new things, always learn, try things that are outside your comfort zone, and then see how, especially if you're an artist, how it affects your art. I feel like that is one good way to like see as a window into people is their art. So you hear this music that's amazing, you can probably kind of infer like that person is really interesting. They're doing some cool things. They've been places and they've tried and experienced things. I could tell because their music makes me like my skin tingle, or like their painting makes me like gaze forever at it or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's a huge thing for the art creative for me too. Same. It's like, since I'm creating at a place where I'm pretty sedentary all the time, it's like huge for me to just be like, okay, what am I doing today? I'm getting in the ocean. I'm going outside. I'm walking around barefoot. I'm trying some other stuff. Like I'm about to go backpacking in August back up in Mammoth just for a couple nights and try to fly fish and catch some fish and
Yeah.
camp under the stars and like live while I'm living. So
Best fishing is always in a lake that you have to hike to, because fishermen at large are surprisingly lazy. If you hike half a mile up a hill to get to a lake, your competition has dropped by 95%.
True.
We also, okay, so you mentioned something that sparked my memory. I think you're going to be fascinated by this. We have talked about this on another podcast, but being a skier, you obviously understand the flow state of skiing, right? Like you're just totally in the zone, you're not thinking about it, and you're just crushing it down the hill. When you're trying to get into flow state working on music, it is a similar feeling, but what you don't realize is that when you're skiing and you're in flow state, there is a consequence of like injury, or like there's a risk involved, right? For you to break your attention, to lose that flow state has a consequence, a risk involved of potential injury. When you're in front of your computer, the consequence for letting yourself break out of flow state, for letting your guard down for your attention is so low that we allow our notifications to be on and we allow our phone to be on and
while it seems low.
Right, while it seems low.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's the same concept, but one of the things that fascinated me was it's easier to stay in flow state doing a sport, but making music, it feels like you go up and down so much. And I think it was Tesko that pointed out it's because you're the risk of breaking your attention is so low. So kind of taking that a step further and applying that, it's like you need to think about the risk of distraction while making music as high as doing a sport that demands 100% of your focus.
Part of what I wonder is how much of that has to do with like recognizing your own mortality. And maybe that sport analogy ties into like, oh, if I can break my arm, I can snap my neck and die type thing. And having a good relationship with death, I'd say, is very crucial to giving you that hustle. Like when people ask, like, how do I find the motivation or how do I do this? I think the reason why music's easier to blow off, obviously you're not going to break your arm or anything, but you're also not consciously thinking, especially if you're not comfortable with the idea of death, that I am slowly dying as I procrastinate right here. And so I think sports just draws that more to the forefront, possibly. Like as you were talking about that, I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts on that? I feel like it sort of ties into your mortality.
Yeah, Seancy, what do you think about the slow march to death?
I think I'm super glad you said that, because lately in the last few years, I'm totally about kind of not only accepting, but like taking a close look at what your death is, because it's like the most deep meditation you can have is the meditation on death, because that's the one part of the experience that is all coming to us that we don't know what's going to happen, and it's unavoidable. And it can be used as an ally to really, like you were saying, motivate you to just accomplish whatever you want and push yourself beyond any limitations you thought you had. So bringing that into this conversation of like in the music production, I think that it's tough. It's a great reminder if you have a practice with that to remember why you're doing stuff and why you get into the flow state. Like the whole, Dylan talks about Wu Wei, like no mind, no hesitation, because that therein lies like the beauty of the creation of like being in that flow state. And I appreciate it so much. I try to get the phone away from me, the distractions away. I think that's why like we probably all at some, at points we're making tons of music late at night because there was literally no distractions, nothing but this focus. And it's literally like a tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And that focus is like, that's kind of the beautiful thing, because the decision making and the other stuff kind of just dissipates into just a movement of like sculpting something until it's finished.
100%. Yeah,
That's interesting.
It's
You
like,
write? Sorry, go Evan.
I was just gonna add that it's like a very powerful motivator if you can optimistically apply that to your daily life, right? And it's like the eternal recurrence thing that Dylan has talked about.
Ooh.
You had to watch your life over like a movie infinite amount of times after you've passed. Would you still be sitting there on the couch eating chips thinking that you should get in the DAW and then I don't need to right now? Like how much would it hurt you to watch yourself do that in third person forever? Ouch, dude.
Damn.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a rough. I think, man, I think it's super beneficial just to think about that. I was just coming back to what you're talking about with sports. I think that like those sports or other activities that have an inherent risk of like a negative outcome just already have that. Like a negative outcome is a smaller like fractal of what death is, like the ultimate, negative outcome for an experience. Whereas with like music and other like decisions in life that got people sitting on couches or whatever they're doing, the small decisions, you don't see the negative side of it, because with music it's like, oh, I can finish the song whenever, or I can make another song if that one's not good. It's not like you get harmed from having a bad outcome. But I think when you start to focus on, okay, death, limited amount of time, the actual resource we actually have, time and energy, and you realize, okay, maybe I should actually like choose wisely with discipline where I'm going to put my time and energy so that I can get the best positive outcome, or for me that would be the best experience, which might not be creating the best music, but having the best time creating music or something like that.
And I think as a skier, you would also relate to this parallel that you just made me think of. So like as a producer, the part that you are scared is when you put the music into the world. There is a risk of negative outcome. There's a risk of people saying this sucks. It's the same as when you go to do that cliff drop on your skis, you're like, man, I could really fuck myself up. But if you've done the training, you've done the practice, you know that you have the skill to do it. If you just make that leap, 9 times out of 10, if you've committed to it, you're going to be completely fine. In skiing, skiing, mountain biking, snowmobiling, dirt biking, I don't care what sport it is, the only thing that you can really fuck up bad is going 50%. If you hit that jump and you go 50%, you are going to hurt yourself. If you go 100%, go a little bit long, kind of skid out into the bushes, you're fine. The times that you really get hurt is when you half-ass it. And so it's like a big lesson in, when you're scared, it's important to make sure that you're going 100% at that thing, knowing and having the confidence of the effort and work that you put in to get to that point. And then that is when you really get that like intrinsically motivating response of knowing you put the work in, succeeding, or even like another parallel, like you crashed on the jump, but you're no longer scared of it, that feeling like you sent it, you didn't land it, but you're no longer scared of doing the drop. So you hike back up and do it again. And you land it that time because you weren't scared. You were just focused on like, how do I do this right? It's the same thing with music. Release the song. If you went 100% at it, you're going to be like, okay, cool. Like I put in my best effort. Like I did this, like I can fix this, this, and this. And you're going to go again and you're just going to keep improving. But if you're scared and going 50% at that moment because you're scared, that's when you're going to get the outcome that you don't want.
Yeah, that reminds me, I don't know if you guys listen to like Gary Vee, or like there's plenty of motivational speakers, people that talk about failure, just how failure is again, failure is kind of like we were talking about death here. Failure is also your ally. It's like the best thing that can happen to you. It just doesn't seem like it. It kind of sucks at the time. Like, damn it, this didn't go how I wanted. But if you take it and you're like, gather all the information I got from this, like you said with the jump, okay, like, oh, I know how to hit this now. I can make this. I can land this. I'm going back up. I'm going for it. And then just in everything you do, if you're just like, I'm going for it, like there's no option B, just going to go for this.
Yeah.
It's happening. You know, if I fail, like I know that I can handle what's going to happen in the failure. But not only that, I'll probably gain stuff gain a bunch of insight that I didn't have before, in order to like actually progress in a way that's very like a very good evolution.
Yes, yes. I heard, I read a kind of a confluence of things recently in my studies, and one, was talking about how the first draft is always the hardest, because like you're looking at, if you're writing, it's the blank page. If you're making music, it's the blank DAW. If you're skiing and about to hit a jump, it's the unknown of what might happen that first time. Once you've done it, you can be like, oh, okay, I see what worked there and what didn't work there. Let me tweak it. But just getting that first draft out there. And I think a lot of the problem, like I've seen with a lot of music producers, including myself, is this worry that your first draft has to be some sort of masterpiece. Especially like your first draft earlier in your career, where it's like, no, just show up and write the shitty songs. We've talked about this on the podcast too. Like, and I heard it really well put reading something the other day in Jim Edwards' book, Copywriting Secrets, that I got right here. He said, before you write something great, you have to write something good. But before you can write something good, you have to write something okay. Before you write something okay, you have to write something bad. And before you write something bad, you have to write something terrible. But before you can even write something terrible, you have to write anything at all. Just write the first draft and then look at it and be like, okay, what do I keep?
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about drafts. Like, how many times have you had to try to write like your bio? That's one for me. I'm just like, dude, how do I describe this? I see other bios that are amazing, and then I'm just like, all right, I'm going to take a stab at it. And each time it gets a little better, a little more accurate, maybe a little more objective, instead of trying to like be like this lavish description of everything and fit everything about your, your art and your music into this like 4 sentences, but, or whatever. But yeah, I love that, having the building. And it's the same. It's like you build templates. Like for me with video editing and stuff too, it's like, the videos just consistently get a little bit better, start to get better tricks and stuff. And you start to have like a better starting point from where you start to begin. You're like, all right, the first video was crap, but like this video is a little better. I kind of like it. I always feel like that. My beats way back, and people would say, oh, those beats are sick. And I was like, nah, they're not very good. I don't like them yet. I like the stuff that I'm using in them, but they're not coming out how like the other music sounds. But I think that's what, separates the really greats from just the talented, and those who have kind of just thrown the towel in, is that just continuing to go for it. Like there's no actual peak that you can climb up to and reach. You're going to keep going up if you just keep trying.
100%. Being comfortable in your own failure is so important, and something that like I'm still fucking terrible at. Like I take that shit wet. Like I always have way too much of a fear barrier to failure on any new project or anything, any sound that's like new and different. Like it doesn't matter what it is. It's a hard barrier to overcome, even for someone with skill. So it's important for everyone, new, old, just starting out, 10 years in the game, to recognize that is difficult for everyone, and to be comfortable in those failures, knowing you gave 100% and learning from it and growing, is going to make your path up that infinite mountain so much more direct. Rather than hypothesizing on what the perfect thing is going to be, you have to create and then iterate to find what that perfect thing is going to be. You're never able to hypothesize what perfect will look like, because there's just no way to do it.
Yep. You don't know what's going to be successful. You don't know what people are going to like. hands down be like the hit, like what's going to go viral. Never know what it's going to be, but you got to just keep showing up and taking the shot, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Seancy, you mentioned earlier at night, you get that tunnel vision focus. Is that a like daily ritual for you? Do you have a ritual around getting in that flow state? Do you not rely, but do you feed off of like motivation, inspiration at this point to get you in the studio? What are your like writing habits?
Let me think. Well, actually, I haven't been writing at night for quite a while. That was just, I was thinking when I was younger, because for me lately, I'm up with the sun and I'm much more productive and like focused and accomplish the things I want during the morning, during the daytime. So that's part of it. Like, I don't know if you guys know, I'm certified to teach yoga. So yoga is a huge thing for me. Get up and move and breathe. And I actually heard another producer recently had a little Zoom for creators, and he was talking about he likes to do holotropic breathing and stuff. And so I've been done some like the Wim Hof breathing, and I'm still building routines, but definitely getting up in the morning, drinking tea, and I usually don't listen to stuff. I'll listen to music and stuff later. First thing, if I have something on my mind, I generally try to just get on writing and knock it out, or try to get those like writing sessions done during the morning, during the day, not think about anything else. And then just like the dojo system, shop keep later at night when you start to lose a little bit of steam. But I'm like avid tea drinker, and like lattes with I make like hot chocolate or lattes or like with the medicinal mushrooms and stuff, and just having that and being able to chill, drink that, and that's huge part of my routine.
You want to talk about breathing a bit? I think that'd be a really interesting topic to get into. Like, it always seems to blow my mind how much breathing actually affects us and how much there is to learn still about breathing.
Dude, absolutely. That's a lot of what I'm doing is like researching other things that relate to just having healthier life foundation. So, but with breathing, they're learning so much. But I was recently listening about like alchemy and stuff, and you realize that actually like oxygen and the way we get energy in our body is like something like over 70% of our energy is supplied through obtaining the oxygen and the energy from breathing and stuff. So if you think about it, like and in our raising, childhoods and stuff, our rearing, whatever, we actually aren't taught like the right way to breathe, which is strange. It seems like, okay, well, it's obvious we know how to breathe. It's natural to beings, but actually when you breathe consciously, it's like your body is a machine, and like you can actually dial it into to be performing at its best. Like when you tune a vehicle to run really well, it gets more horsepower, better fuel efficiency, it runs with less noise, it's not rattling, whatever. So with breathing, it's a similar thing. You can learn how to breathe appropriately, like the right way. And one of the main things is that actually people tend to breathe into their shoulders, into their chest, and lift up. You can see the breathing like this. And it's actually not the best way to breathe, because the way your lungs work is it's like a balloon, and when it inflates, it's kind of like downward and then outward. If you imagine putting your hands around a balloon as it inflates, the circumference of that circle starts to grow. So really when you want to breathe into your belly. The diaphragm pulls belly first, and then you expand down and into the belly, and then the chest lifts at the end. So it's actually called a 3-part breath, where you expand into the belly, the chest, and then the upper part, because you get a little bit of breath from lifting in the collarbone area and everything too. So practicing that is like super fundamental to stress relief, especially stress relief, and focus is great too, because when you oxygenate your body, like every system starts to work better. It calms your mind. I like a point that I learned in yoga that was really cool is there's 3 fundamental like vibrational waves happening in your body system, and that's your mind waves, your heart waves, so those two vibrationals, and then your breath. And those are the three different frequencies sort of happening. And yet we really only consciously have control over one. Like you can't actually control your heart rate. You can't just be like, okay, I'm at 44 beats per minute now I'm at 100 whenever I want. Like it's actually controlled based on in response to your breathing. And then your mind waves, you can't actively say, oh, I'm going to come to this like meditative state or whatever by just willing it. I mean, some people can when you get to that level, but what you can do is you can control your breathing. You can start to do a breath that has a longer exhale than an inhale, and that's known to trigger the vagus nerve, which is a nerve that runs from your brain through your heart. So it's direct. It's one of the longest nerves in the body. I think it runs all the way down to your tailbone. And when you trigger that, that's like your stress relief. That's your parasympathetic nervous system, I believe. And so if you ever sat down after a long day and you exhale like, and you sigh it out, that's like an automatic cue to your nervous system to go to rest and restore. So that kind of stuff I think is super helpful in just in anything in daily life all the time. You can just consider like even just, okay, for a moment, let me just sit up and take like 5-10 like conscious breaths, really expand, see what's going on, see if I can relax a little bit, like let some tension go by like really extending the exhale and see how it affects you. And I think it has like unbelievable positive like a ripple effect to what happens with the rest of your life, with your day and everything. As you wind up being calmer, making different decisions, less stress, feeling healthier, sleeping better, all that stuff. So it's funny, you know, we're talking about music, but yeah, for real, breathing is like is foundational to everything.
So like
100%.
to specifically, you know, obviously all of that is really great advice for any human at any time. Is there any way that you specifically use that for production or for like while you're sitting in the chair at your desk? Are there any like, do you take conscious breathing breaks? Do you, try to stay conscious of your breath while you're working?
Sometimes I think that's a good challenge, and I might have to incorporate that into the production now. Be like, okay, how am I going to actually have this as a practice? But I think with the practice of yoga, you wind up doing breathing consciously. It's really part of the practice of doing yoga is keeping your awareness on your breath while you're doing other things. So you have this focus, it's a centralized focus, kind of like that flow state focus. And when you've been doing it for a while, it comes to a point where that breathing starts to happen naturally. Kind of, you get this, it's called an ujjayi breath, which is kind of a constriction in the back of your throat. And it's like, you sound like Darth Vader, or you sound like the ocean or fogging up a window, like, but your mouth is, if you're breathing through your nose, it's not quite that sound. And what I find is like when I'm getting into states of focus and stuff, I kind of get to breathing like that. Before I'm going to bed, I'm breathing like that. And so it kind of is already now inherent in music production for me, because if I'm sitting there and I'm like breathing and doing my thing, I can hear myself breathing, and it's like I'm trying to hold a yoga pose, except instead of the pose that's like a physical body pose, it's like just doing the production stuff. And yet the practice of feeling that wave of the breath is there. So I've definitely noticed that over like the last, couple years of getting more in depth on yoga, that like I'm waiting in line at the store to check out. I'm breathing and doing a little bit of a stretch or something, and like sometimes not consciously doing it, just listening to my body, and just breathing, like driving, just breathing. It's interesting to be like really you get pretty relaxed. So it's interesting to be super relaxed while you're driving and breathing well and stuff. But I definitely think it would be cool to bring that in. I think it was David Starfire is a producer that's had introduced that idea, that he actually does holotropic breathing. Like he gets up and does it for like 20 minutes, which is basically, to describe it quickly, is like hyperventilating. You're just breathing huge deep breaths kind of rapidly, fully in and fully out. That's the Wim Hof method too. And you can get into really some pretty interesting states of like consciousness and being just from that. Like you get lightheaded, you could get tingles, you get
It's almost
rushes.
like a body high.
It's totally. And I like that. If you guys haven't tried it, his method's sick too. Like you do it for about 30 breaths and then you exhale everything out and you hold your breath as long as you can. And it's crazy. You practice it for a little bit. I've been able to hold my breath for about like 3 minutes out. And then when you inhale in, then you get this crazy rush when your body gets actual oxygen back again. But I feel like it resets you. For me, I get like a lot of sensation in my ears, like almost like a ringing, but I can tell because it's the blood getting back in there. And it's really cool. What it does is it hyperoxygenates you when you breathe like that. So it hyperoxygenates your blood. So you really don't have as much of an issue of getting rid of CO2. So you can hold your breath for a lot longer. Obviously, like deep free divers know about that. And then one of the other interesting benefits is like you get more resilient and stronger. So one of the challenges with that is in Wim Hof's method is to do as many push-ups as you can with your breath held out after you've done that. And people report that you can just do like 15, 20% more push-ups than usual, even though you're holding your breath out. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
One thing I found really interesting about Wim Hof is, compared to other meditations I've tried, is when you're consciously breathing in and out at that extent, you can't focus on anything else. It like snaps you into that meditative state by like breath 10.
Yeah. Totally. And I don't know if any listeners were focusing on their breath while that.
Oh, I have been.
Oh my God. Like literally like 10 breaths, like focusing on like diaphragm first, then chest. The last 10% is like shoulders. Like I did that like 10 times while I was listening to you, and I was like, man, I already feel better. And
as soon as you said that, sorry, Evan, it feels different, right? Like I wasn't thinking of that consciously in God knows how long. And as soon as you brought that up, it's like that natural ebb and flow.
Yeah.
But sorry, Evan.
No, it just reminds me that I need to practice that enough that it frees the mental bandwidth to do something like music production or ride my mountain bike and have that process going subconsciously in a, efficient manner. And dude, Wim Hof is, I tried it for the first time. Like I first heard about it like last summer, and the use case that I found fucking fascinating is we were at Shambhala and we were getting in the river to it was not hot out. It was like one of the really overcast kind of 55, 60 degree days. And we were getting clean in the river. And I was like, let me try this Wim Hof thing and then get in the river. And before, you'd get in and you're like, oh, fuck, it's so cold. God, I gotta get out. God. And I literally did Wim Hof and hopped in the river, and I was like, I'm chilling.
Literally.
This is nice. This is not stressing my body at all. I could stay here for hours. And I was just like, that is fucking crazy. It's just intentional breathing, something that we take for granted probably more than just about anything else. Intentionally doing that can have such a positive impact on your life. I wish there was more people like you, Seancy, to remind me of how important that is on a daily basis, because it's so easy to forget and constantly forget. I know that I'm the least flexible person on the face of the earth, and I constantly try to get better, but breathing past that is completely lost. It's just not something that my brain has a trigger to think about. And it's just as important or more important to being a high functioning individual. I'm so glad, Tesko, I'm so glad that you wanted to center on that, because it just, I can already tell that bringing that to the forefront of my mind is going to make a positive impact on.
100%. One thing I'd love to know, have you adjusted your sitting posture or anything since you started going deeper into yoga, or have you made any adjustments like that? For example, I'm at the computer a lot, and I notice when you get into this inevitable slouch position, it really messes up that ebb and flow between, the diaphragm, the chest, and the upper airway, whatever thing. Have you made any adjustments like that in your life?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have like this nice thing on my chair that actually I found in my alley. I get gifted things in the alley. People leave stuff that they don't want, and this thing straps in and keeps you in like a nice upright position. I also got a exercise ball, so I could pull the exercise ball out like right here and just sit on that, so that you're actually actively engaging your abs and your core muscles and stuff. But yeah, totally. I'll find myself just like right now I'm kind of leaning forward because the sun's in my eyes, but usually I'm sitting back looking up a little bit. And say that if you're sitting in a chair where you have a little bit of recline, you actually engage your cores a little bit. So if you're looking down at your computer, it's not quite as good as looking slightly up at it. But yeah, I think I definitely try also to adopt that like 45 minutes. I think there's a Tibetan practice of 40 or 45 minutes of intentful work, and then like 5 to 10 minutes of break. But for every hour, within like an hour, 40, they say 40 minutes, but sometime around there. So I try to do that, try to get up, stretch, and have a couple breaths and figure out where I'm getting stiff. But, we're all probably guilty of having sat there for too long a lot of times because you really get focused on what you're doing. So, I don't get mad at, hard on myself about that. I just, at that time, I'm like, oh, and I can tell I've kind of got my body into a state of not feeling as good. I'll redouble my efforts to like do yoga there, just stretch, there's a bunch of stuff. You can do neck stretches. You can do a lot of things, and just even like lifting your arms up, man, and just get them up and do like a stretch above your head while you're listening to your playback and stuff. Yeah, there you go. Do a little bit of that. And I have like a lot less self-consciousness about doing that kind of stuff in public. Like I'm stretching, I'm doing yoga, like randomly, like anywhere that I feel like I need to do it. Like the forward fold, which is just when you folded the waist, kind of touch your toes type of thing. Just constantly, all the time, decompress your spine against gravity if you can. So, yeah. But, I'm glad we brought this up because now it's like, cool. Now I got to bring it back in a more conscious way into the practice of being a creator at a station like this. I really want in the future to have a desk. I can have one of those stand and sit desks, but also have it set up as like the production desk too. So I have like this, like the monitors and everything set up so it adjusts accordingly if you need. But yeah, because I find that a lot of people are reporting telling me that standing for a period and then sitting for a period is just way better. It's way better for your health than to just sit the whole time.
Yeah, amen. Tesko, you got one of those, right?
Yes, sir. I'm not going to lie. I stopped using the standing functionality of it like a few months ago, and I haven't got back into it. But it definitely is nice when you can actually like move to the music, And again, I'm glad we're talking about this stuff because I'm going to retrain myself to start standing more. Like I just like vividly remember the benefits of being able to move around while I made music. And a lot of that is probably attributed to breathing.
Totally. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I think like a good hack for that is just like using your phone alarms, like, or, if you want to get your phone in the other room, set one on your computer where, it's just, you have a 45-minute timer go off and remind you to stand up and breathe, grab some water, do a stretch, or, set a timer like, okay, I'll sit for this hour and then I'll stand for this hour. Things like that. Utilize, people complain about technology a lot, but it's a tool. You use it to your benefit. Use it to benefit your human instead of break it down.
Totally. You guys ever heard of, that reminds me, like even in that, like you could set a reminder every 45 to do something for 1 minute. I think there's again, I think it comes to a Tibetan practice or something, but it's like called the 1 minute practice. Like every day, if you practice something for 1 minute, like intently, you can master it. You can literally master it within a lot shorter time than you would expect. Because ultimately, you probably wind up doing it a lot more than 1 minute when you actually like what you're doing and stuff. But I think that's like a good one for producers, especially for the breathing or the stretching or whatever. Like at least have that 1 minute break in there. You could do a little 1 minute meditation where you just kind of observe thoughts and see if you can start to calm like the pattern of like all these thoughts happening, and then get back into like a centered state.
Yeah, totally. We've touched on that concept before with like, if you're trying to get good at sound design, you got to make one patch a day. Like figure out where the fog starts rolling in mentally. Be like, okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to make one patch. Or recently I've been focusing on getting better at guitar. And so if I start to get tired, unfocused on the song that I'm working on, I'll literally turn around, turn on my amp and play one song on the guitar, and just switching into that different mindset that is like it's like an active thing. Like my brain has to connect to my hands and like just like makes different neural pathways fire and like brings your conscious awareness to one specific thing. It breaks you out of that fog super quickly. I love that concept.
Man, that's also super huge for me, is like playing songs. A lot of the music that I write is like written in a more traditional sense of like writing choruses and verses and choruses and getting like a groove and like a foundation. And my partner that I rap with in the FLOWMADS, we talk about like that for like a lot of songs up until the electronic music production came around. Like the test of a song wasn't like the actual recording or master of that song. It was like, how good is a song that like other people can remember and play this song. It's like the song is the song. It's not the one master recording of that song. You know, like everyone can remember all these Beatles songs or all these like really, really classic songs throughout history, because they're just a combination of these patterns that are so beautiful together. And,
Amen. That's something that I had to really kind of unlearn and then relearn, unlearn my bad habits and relearn that piece of philosophy that the song is not made of its production. The song is the parts that the listener can hum later while it's stuck in their head, and or repeat the lyrics, the melody, the cadence. Like those parts make it the song, and then you can have that song be covered by somebody else. A different artist can take those pieces, rearrange all the music around it, and it's still that song.
Right? Yeah, it's like you can completely transform it and people will still recognize that song underneath of what it is. So that's what we trying to write. We're trying to write classics that are songs that you're just like, you know that song through and through no matter what, based on that core like thread of continuity of something about it, you know. But I think I brought that up because you were talking about playing the guitar, and how I just feel like, man, like actually playing something, playing on keys, playing like a percussion, using your voice as an instrument, playing guitar, it's different because it's challenging to your body, but at the same time like rewarding. You're getting the feedback, and I think that's super, super important in bringing that into your production. Like all the time, I'm like using my voice to create like the idea. Like I know a lot of times I'm going to forget an idea if I don't just lay it down. So I have like the voice recorder and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to have the bass line. Like notable songs. Like I think, Luke, you know, you talked about my song "Got That Fire," and like that's a song where I hummed the bass line almost like da 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 da. And I was like, and then when I went in, I just figured out the notes that I had laid down on like a vocal recording for it, and something about like just letting that come out right when I was making it made it exactly what it needed to be, rather than like later on and just like cool sound and then figuring out and active is what I would call it, active music production, where you sort of playing stuff.
Sorry, we got a bit cut out there.
Yeah, you broke up just a little bit in there. So you were saying, you had the bass line that you hummed out, and then you went and figured it out. And what was it from there?
Yeah, it was just what it needed to be, because just in the moment using whatever resource as your instrument, I just think like actively having like an instrumental thing happening, even if you're just tapping a pattern or whatever, and bringing that like person, that human. This is a human music podcast, so you got to bring the human element in, and a lot of times this like human interacting with environment creates the sound and the music, you know. And it's hard, a lot of times that's difficult to translate in electronic music, because we spend so much time on the details instead of like, where did this come from? Oh, this came from the idea inside my head that was like I was whistling or something, playing on the guitar. Like I just played something, it sounded beautiful, and then it just rolled.
It's so true. And a lot of beginning producers kind of have this fear that like, well, I can't really play anything on the piano, so I just don't want to use that at all to try and benefit. Dude, if you can't play the melody on the piano, that is perfectly fine. You don't even if you don't even have a MIDI controller or keyboard or anything, play the rhythm on a keyboard key and just move the notes to where the melody is supposed to be. That rhythm that you just tapping out on the keyboard key, give it 10 tries, take your favorite. Just the minute little differences in timing of you tapping it on your keyboard is going to end up with such a more human piece that connects with people. It's no longer just MIDI notes perfectly on grid. Sounds like a robot tried to synthesize the idea that you had. It is now there's the human element, and that it just instantly connects with people so much better.
That is such a huge gem, bro. And I think too, if they made that mindset shift and cherished the skill level that they are at and recognize that they will only ever have this perspective in this moment, like you'll get better technically, but it doesn't always mean the shit you're gonna write is gonna be better. And sometimes you knowing how to play 3 notes right now, you can make something more meaningful than knowing how to play 60 notes a minute or a second or whatever in the future. Like I revisit some of my old stuff and I see how much I've almost boxed myself in certain aspects of my production, So just changing that mindset and doing whatever you can, like that's going to yield results you're going to be looking back on for years.
And even like one more level macro, like it's really easy for everyone out there listening to be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, I should do that more. And then when you're writing, that fear creeps in and you don't do it because you're unsure of what the result might be. It's important to understand and realize in the moment that that is actually what's happening. A lot, like I've said on this podcast before, like the thing that takes me the most time is just figuring out that the genesis, like the best part of that song. And if you are continuing to struggle on the same thing that you think is almost there, and you're not breaking out of that pattern of trying the same thing but different, you're never going to get that thing that's great. You get the thing that's great by realizing, I'm stuck in a rut. I've tried 3 different versions of this. It's not working. I have to realize that I'm beating my head against a wall and then be like, okay, that's all that was happening. Let me try something different. It's so hard in the moment to accept those types of things for what they are, but it's so important once you realize that. When you're like, no, I'm not gonna tap it on my keyboard because I don't know, I don't usually do that, so I'm just not gonna do that. Like realizing that is yourself getting in the way. Like just being able to like get to the conclusion that like, oh wait, no, I should definitely try that. What's the worst thing that can happen? I'm not gonna use it. Great, But it's so hard to have that awareness in the moment when you're producing.
Because that's what we do. We self-sabotage. It's just classic humanity at play.
Yeah.
We're like, well, we're very critical when we're people who have a high level of I'm trying to think of the word for high level for whatever, music we listen to and we really like, and then we compare it to what we're making. We're super critical and we're like, well, this is not up to par, so I might as well not do it, is what saying. But essentially you got to not listen to that voice in your head. You have to listen to the original voice, which is the kid inside of you saying, go for it. This looks like fun. Just do the thing that nobody cares about the outcome of it. Do it because it's fun and it's right. And that's when, and then you'll find out, I think we've all found out that that's where the best little gems and the best, the nuggets and, the best parts of songs are generated. The most beautiful ideas are in those moments of actual release, not attached to any sort of outcome, or because that's all ego saying, oh, I'm not good enough. Ego is both ways. It's oh, I'm this and I'm better and I'm that, but it's also ego's I'm not good enough, I'm a victim, whatever. But honestly, it's no, it's plenty good enough. It's exactly what it needs to be right now, to just tap it out on the keyboard. I love that idea. I want to try that, where I just take one note and just hit the pattern and then change the notes on the MIDI editor into a melody. Yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah. But and it wouldn't happen if you weren't just a kid, just ready to try anything for the sake of trying.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, amen. I could see that working super well, one with melodies like we've been talking about, but also when, say, the mud pie method, where you get all this crazy sound design sample of randomness, happy accidents, you pick your favorite moments, and then you listen to your drum pattern and just tap out the pattern of when whatever bass wub wob or wiggle might happen to happen. Be oh, it's gonna go wah 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 wah, and then you're okay, cool. Now let me audition between all of these different slices I have in the sampler or in the drum rack, where, oh, maybe it's this one, maybe it's that one. Oh no, it's definitely that one. That's that one. Okay, move on to the second one and move it up and down the piano roll and figure out, where does this hit best?
It ties back into that idea of drafting you brought up. So true for everything. You could take the most complex piece of work and break it down to its few core motifs, and you realize, oh, all these little fluttery notes and added melodies and counter melodies and blah 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 all stem from this 3 or 4 note motif. And when you start viewing when you start viewing it as a very strong core foundational idea, which you're then doing drafts upon and adding to that, and even better, taking away from and leaving space open. When you go through those stages of drafts, that's when you come up with the best ideas. But if you're constantly worried about I can't play, I'm not going to play anything dope, or I'm just not feeling it right now, I can't come up with something cool. Well, come up with something not cool, and then make it meh, and then make it oh, okay, that's it, and then it's cool.
Yeah.
Amen. You kind of, since we're back around the horn there to this idea, it's it reminds me another thing I learned from this book about how to write ad copy and took into production, this idea that copy is not written, it's assembled. You have chunks of building blocks, oh, these are some cool headlines that could be at the top of my ad, and here are some good bullet points about my product, and here are some good story elements that I could use to sell it. And then you rearrange them until it actually works and is coherent. And it's the exact same for music production. It's here's some really good drum sounds, here's some cool drum patterns, here's some good bass sounds, here's some good melodies. Now let me arrange them one way, figure out what parts are definitely working that I really like. I'll leave those there, and any that aren't really up to my, my standards, then I can swap out for other things. Or maybe this section works better as an outro instead of a drop, or just curate good building blocks and shuffle them around until you're like, yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Totally. 100%.
Yep, I'm a big proponent of having a sweet sample library and not having to do a lot of the work yourself. I know a lot of people, there are a lot of artists who like to create all the stuff, and like more power to them. For me, a lot of times that the flow state just happens from like having everything on hand, and like you said, like finding the right part. Like, does this part fit the bill? No, this one does though. Oh, perfect. A lot of happy little accidents. I love combining stuff. I think for me, like, I've noticed I've been good at mixing things, combining things for a while now. So like, cause I'm good at cooking. I was a good bartender, craft cocktails and mixology and stuff like that. It's all about having the right ingredients and the right amounts mixed at the right time, and it becomes something like greater than the sum of all the parts. So
Exactly.
I appreciate that stuff.
Yeah, and I think we gotta take from those wonderful metaphors you just gave us. Nobody's mad at the bartender for not being the distiller. Nobody's mad at the chef for not being the farmer. Nobody's mad at the yoga teacher for not having invented every pose. Like, it's like they're pumped that you gave them a really good sequence of poses today that all flowed into each other. They're happy that you took these ingredients and put them together into this dope meal and this dope cocktail, and having the foresight to make these flavors in the cocktail and the plate of food complement each other. And that's production. And if you also, as a producer, really feel a calling to be a sound designer, awesome. I highly endorse you doing that. Please send me those patches. I don't really feel like doing it. Big shouts to Rip Kenny. Evan is a killer sound designer compared to me. And lately he's been sending me patches, and I've been making some of my favorite stuff using the patches that he designed. And so I get to run with melody, which is one of my favorite things to work with. And taking that a step further, even if you want to be the sound designer, spend time designing sounds, save them, and then go write a song with a whole bunch of cool sounds that you made and some others that you curated. But you don't have to do it all like linear, like let me design a sound and then make the perfect melody out of it and then make the perfect rhythm and design the drums as I'm going. Like, that's harkens back to the day and nighttime sessions. Nighttime sessions, you've got a little bit of time, make a patch. If you really want to design drums, design some. Then take those patches and combine them into racks and combine them into templates, so that when you're like, I've got a great idea for a song, you open the template and have all the sounds you need in front of you and a well-organized sample library that you organize during nighttime sessions. So that day you've got all day Saturday to write your song. All of a sudden, every obstacle has been, figured out. Everything that would have slowed you down has been taken away, and you've just got a pile of awesome building blocks to grab and run with.
Yeah.
Can't emphasize that enough. Like, it seems like, what's the word? Like, tedious work to get organized and to have that stuff, and to like take the time to say, okay, I'm gonna actually set up having a sample library and have all my instruments that I use the most. And like, I'm on Ableton, I use this thing called Ableton, what is it? Enhancement Suite. Oh my God, just take the time to set that up. It's a double right click. You can get all your favorite effects on like a drop down menu. You don't have to go look, and like, it's just seconds. But if you think of how many times you spend seconds looking, instead of like, I love that analogy of having your tools right where you need them. You don't even have to look, like, where your tools are that you need to grab. So if you're working on something, you don't even have to look away from what you're working on to get it done. So it's just so worth it. And, it takes years of practice to figure that out. I worked for like 10 years making beats and didn't have an organization process or anything. I still made some cool beats, but if I think back, imagine how much I would have done if I had organized some stuff and come to the table ready to actually like write at a smooth, fast pace. But wait, what was I thinking?
Go for it.
One last thing, I just thought that I like the sound design aspect is like when you make sound design, a lot of times for me, that's actually where the Sparks folder happens, because I'll make sounds and then just play something and be like, damn, that's awesome. Even if I wasn't making that sound for a specific purpose, but all of a sudden I've got like a spark started because the sound informed like where that should go and start to create like melodies or bass lines or whatever with it. So I love that combination of doing sound design and having an organization and having like Sparks folders and stuff that you can tuck that stuff away. So when it's time to go, you're like, boom, what's this? Oh, that's awesome. It's already set. Like all I have to do is make like the backline for it and we're done.
Yeah, exactly. And to kind of tie a bow on this, you're absolutely right. It does seem tedious to people that haven't taken the time to do all of this organization. It's like, well, I want to make a beat. I don't want to sit here. That's the fun part. I don't want to sit here and do all this boring, like organizing hi-hats into folders. But every minute you spend doing that saves you that minute on every song you make after that. So if you spent hours going through all your folders and finding the best ones, organizing them as you go, saving them onto racks as you go, putting, favorites folders together, building templates, and you spent 3 hours doing that one day. That saves you 3 hours of dicking around on your hard drive when you really want to be in the DAW for your next 100 songs. Congratulations, you just gifted yourself 297 hours by spending 3. Exponential gift to yourself of time given back to you to do the funnest part over and over and over again.
Facts.
Big facts.
Hey, one thing I wanted to ask Seancy, we've talked about this before on the show, this idea of like every 3 months or so, there's generally like some sort of concept or technique or something that you take along with you that sort of changes, the way you produce for a bit. Generally, we've found it sort of tends to come in these like 3 month sort of chunks. Do you feel like you've learned anything recently that you've been utilizing a lot, or, it's just pulled your attention to and you've been trying to be more aware of? Anything like that you could share with the peeps?
Let me think. Well, I mean, honestly, it was like the revolution of the mix process busing on Ableton or wherever. It was coming because I was already starting to get that sense. I was like I use like tracks as returns instead of using the sends, kind of the way Dylan does. And I actually use tracks and create buses. So like using that has just been fundamental. Like, and then having that template. And I knew I needed to like remake it, and I remade it. And I did another challenge where I created an Ableton template with all stock Ableton plugins. So instead of using some of those third-party ones, using like the saturator and the compressor as clippers have been really fundamental. And I've been actually just really loving the Ableton saturator plugin for all kinds of stuff, just even straight vocals and stuff. And like, it's got a lot of versatility. That thing is fun. And then the other thing that I really liked was, I know it took a lot to get through to it, but the neuro sound design, the bass sound design from Dylan, which was, I think there was a lot that went into it, but the fundamental part that I took away that was amazing was like creating a sound and creating modulations in the sound, flattening that as a sound, and then throwing it back into a sampler so you can pitch bend and manipulate the sound that already has all these wet effects and stuff going on with it. That was just like, duh, oh man, that's genius, because then you can get this amazing sound and then do stuff with it that wouldn't happen necessarily if you were trying to just run MIDI and then still run everything through an FX chain. It's like all the FX chain has been flattened into this amazing sound. It's become a sample, and then you resample it. So having those modulations and stuff, like that's fundamental to what I've been doing now. It's like, okay, I'm gonna like continue to do that. That just flatten in place, commit to some sounds, add texture, add character into things, and then use that as your sample. So, I mean, it's funny because now that I've said that, I realize that is something that I used to do a long time ago. I would like go through records. I'd find like one flute note, and I would take that flute note and write a whole melody with it, and it'd be like crackly and crappy sounding, but I would love it. And then I like to take other sounds and use them as my instruments in another way, as a different instrument. And I think about that, like, okay, yeah, that's definitely like, so now it's like come full circle. It's like everything in evolution is a spiral. You come back to the same point, but you're not in the same point. You've like come up another level each time you come around, and you realize, oh, I'm at the same spot again, but I've leveled up. I know, I have a little bit more wisdom about this situation here. So yeah,
I love that spiral analogy.
Yeah,
That's
people always talk about the downward spiral that folks can go through, but the upward spiral is way more awesome. Strive for that.
Totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And for our listeners, these techniques that Seancy's talking about using, like the bus mixing template, that shout outs to Skrillex for opening up how he does things and influencing so many people, and these resampling techniques are all available in the weekly download that our mentor ill.Gates does every week. And we got a link to that in the show notes. You can watch the live classes for free on Dojo TV. And it's only $20 a month to get 4 new live classes and then have access to the like 200 plus episode library. So shouts to ill.Gates. To close this out, I would love you to do some shameless plugging of the projects you've got going on. What's out? What do you want people to go check out? And then we can leave some links to that as well in our show notes.
Epic, absolutely. So lately been putting a lot into FLOWMADS. So the FLOWMADS were like futuristic reggae, hip hop based music. And you can check out what we're doing. You just look up FLOWMADS. It's FLOWMADS.
Super dope, by the way. Really impressed with your sound, you guys are. What's your partner's name in that?
His name is SizFlow.
SizFlow?
So, SizFlow, yeah. The one and only, the Prophet C. And he's awesome, man. He and I have a lot in common, and then a lot of differences in what we bring to the table. So it's been sick. He tells me he looked his whole life to try to find a producer. He always needed a producer, that no one was at his level. And he's like, I finally found you. Like, you're not going anywhere. We're making this. So you can check out FLOWMADS. We're on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, all that stuff. We dropped 2 songs this year that are probably some of the best stuff we've ever done. We dropped a song called Blessings with our friend, Mr. Kevin Bong. He plays in a band called Stick Figure. It's a really big reggae band. And that song came together really dope. And it's just a lot of what we do is positivity, trying to raise the vibes, just keep that good vibe going, and talk about conscious, it's conscious hip hop. So talk about ways we can improve as human beings. And then we dropped a song with a living legend. Guys, if you know of the living legends, Barry and LA, underground hip hop. But one of the living legends, his name's Scarab. And we got to go on tour with him last year. So we got him on a track. It's called Space Outlaws. It's kind of like our Renegade. It's a Renegade rebel song. And we're loving that track. That just dropped a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, something like that. We made a little promo clip for it where we're kind of looking like outlaws in an old spaghetti western movie. It was kind of ridiculous, but we had a great time. So you can check that out. And we have another just absolute banger that's kind of got more trap vibe to it coming out called Don't Run and Hide. And we got to be made into zombies for that one. So on the cover art, we're zombies. It's kind of pretty timely for what's going on. It's like, you know what, we got to face problems with what's going on in the world, and you can't just run away from everything. So we're super psyched to be dropping that. And then I'm sure you'll be hearing some more stuff, a lot more from Seancy coming up. I got some independent productions that I'm really excited about. And not only that, I have a track with Luke Rain also in the mix.
What's up?
That is super, super sick. I'm super glad we decided to connect on that and everything. So
me too, man.
just stay tuned. You can find me on I'm most active on Instagram, so if you guys wanted to check out what I'm doing, what I'm sharing on my Instagrams, it's the FLOWMADS, or you can find Seancy, and it's at the number 5 EANCY for my main stuff, and I appreciate it. I'm so stoked that I got to sit down and talk with you guys. This has been super, super fun.
Yeah, bro.
Our pleasure, man.
I want to shout out, first off, Space Outlaws is my jam. That next one you got coming out, remind me of the name.
Don't Run and Hide.
Don't Run and Hide, right? Yeah, you showed me that while we were on our session, and woo, that one I'm excited for too.
Yeah.
And Got That Fire is still one of my favorite dojo releases, man, off of Class of 808 Volume 2. I absolutely love that jam. That plays in that your hook plays in my head every time I hear your name. We're about to set up a call, and I actually still use it as a reference track because the mix on that track is banging.
Dude, thank you. That's so epic, man. I'm so thankful that I took the plunge and got into the dojo. So if anyone's thinking about doing it, check it out. Super worth it. You got to invest in yourself, and that's where that fire came from. And yeah, dude, I'm psyched. I love that song. We play that song live. I play that as a part of the FLOWMADS set live, and playing that song live is just too much fun, man. And it really gets people's jaws to drop and their eyes open like, what is this song? So mad love, man. Appreciate it.
I'm excited for when they let us back outside so I can see you and you with the FLOWMADS live and in person, man.
Absolutely.
Anything else y'all want to add?
Thanks for joining us, man. That was awesome. It's great talking to you.
We touched on a lot of stuff that is, good reminders, eye-opening stuff that a lot of people as producers take for granted, like breathing. And I just think there's a lot of really good, helpful tidbits in here, and all the producers out there, or just humans listening at all, are going to be really stoked on. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Dude, yeah, just again for me, super thankful. A lot of gratitude to you guys. I'm stoked we got to connect and talk, because it's cool, because it's almost like, I've known who you guys are for a while, but getting to talk to you more in person, and it's cool. And it's just I hope it'll be a never-ending conversation and growing relationships and stuff. So much appreciated, and I can't wait to just check out what else you guys keep coming up with. That's what keeps me excited.
Likewise, man. Can't wait to have you back on. I'm sure it'll be even better the second time around. So yeah, it's great.
Humans of Earth or other planets, I don't know.
Peace out, humans.
Peace.
Peace, humans.
Woo! I like it. What's up, humans? It's Luke, your friendly neighborhood trap Jesus. Thank you so much for watching our videos. We appreciate you. Remember to like and subscribe to our channels. And if you have any questions or topics that we need to cover on the show, put them in the comments. Appreciate you. Peace. And peace among worlds.